but I'm going to go to Jugtown because it has some fascinating issues to it. That's stop number 3. Stop number 3 is really fascinating because it really encompasses a good portion of it. It's got the 5 and 10 minute walk. Within the 10-minute walk is the Butler track. People had some very interesting ideas about the Butler track and also some very interesting ideas about the Jugtown area. Now you can see the red part of it, that's really at the very right-hand side, is kind of the L shape. So the whole thing went highly susceptible to change from the Bank of America parking lot to the municipal, the old fire station. Now, I'm just going to focus at this point on the fire station, which is just right here. There's this little piece right here. This little piece to start off with. So we did this little piece and said, okay, what would happen on this little piece? So what do people want? So again, parking half level underground, which means that the buildings are raised roughly about 3 or 4 feet above the ground, and then you go 3 or 4 feet under the ground and you park on the building. And you have stoops and stairs in the front. That's really one of the key factors to safety. You do a double-loaded corridor against the side. There's the little axiometric of what it could look like. That's a little bit of a detail of what it would actually look like. Kind of an H-shaped building with a kind of a porte cochere in the front of it. And then here's the doodle. So there's what it is now, a big, open, empty, ugly parking lot. And this is what it could be. I mean, it's just super, and again, you got a certain percentage of this with low and moderate, you got a certain percentage that could be elderly, and I think even more so elderly because you can have a drop-off directly in front, but also you have access to all these interesting shops and stores right in the back. I mean, Jugtown is a very interesting but very complex little corner. Okay, then there's a program for that one, okay? Now, if we consider all of stop 3, which is much more complicated, and say, hey, listen, what happens if we would actually develop the whole red piece, including the municipal parking lot, all the way up to the Bank of America building? 2 things became important. One, keep the existing buildings at the corner, which really maintain the corner of that building. Don't do anything across the street, just let that all alone. But leave the park on the corner. But the other question was, could you actually do a street section which looked like this, which means you pull retail up to the front of the street, you have housing above, and you have parking in back, and all of them have green roofs. That's clear on all of the stuff. But then, if you did that, and you decided, or they decided, or whoever decided, that, listen, they were all going to get together and make a huge amount of money, and do the whole project at one crack, which could be interesting, but probably not very likely. And you created this kind of internal pedestrian walkways inside this. Again, that whole idea of making smaller, beautiful spaces. And maybe it's just something that has come out of seeing small, beautiful spaces. It would begin to look a bit like that. And again, there's the program for the whole Jugtown. Butler. Wow, Butler was so interesting. People really got into Butler big time when we were doing the workshops. It's a big piece of land, but in order to be able to do it, there has to be some improvements to Harrison Street. Or else, you can see the little kind of orange dot that happens. The university bus may actually have to stop at that particular point, but there needs to be some improvement to be able to get Butler connected to the overall golden ring. Now here, going back to a drawing that you saw earlier, here's where the problem intersections were. Now, I'm just going to focus on this one, right? So here's the thought. Okay, there you got it now, right? And it's a tough intersection, no doubt about that. But hey, what would happen if we said, okay, we're going to make this a barn walk? Let's just make this a barn walk. Okay, so then, of course, you got this issue again. Okay, we're all auto-oriented, we're all going to complain because we've got to stop some more, and we're in our big SUV with one person in it, and we got to stop some more, and I hate it, and I'm going to complain to Mia and the board and the traffic folks that this is a terrible thing because I have to wait too long in my car. Well, in the downtown, you're going to have to make these trade-offs. Is it car, or is it going to be more car, pedestrian, 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 car, pedestrian, pedestrian? You have to make those to begin the decision. Now, the susceptibility to change, wow, all went red. Unbelievable amount of red. The whole site down there almost went completely red at wow, really? But I knew the Butler track would go, but I didn't think the rest of it would go. But people had some fabulous ideas like eco-housing, solar panels, green roofs, orchards, gardens. Okay, how do I translate that into something form? Now, one of the things, first of all, you can see, before that green arrow went in there, you can actually see the site. There's the Butler track there, right? Cool thing about the Butler track is that it already has a grid system in place. All the sewers and waters and stuff is in place. And it's got these 2 linear parks, literally on both sides of the plan. What would happen, just as a hypothetical, if this linear park connected directly through to the university? One linear park connected directly through to the university. And, now, go, oh no, there's a house in the way. Well, I know that, but be that as it may, it's just a thought, right? But now there was several. There's a site, and right now the site has got on-street parking on it, and I find in most cases people have told us eliminate that nasty on-street parking as much as possible, So of course here is that little section I was talking about early on, and again it's a little more expensive, but you see you go partially underground because you got to go underground anyway for frost. Raise the first level up above, have stoops and stairs in the front, and then, which we found, not only are units safer, but what happens is the people are more content and have worked really well with this semi-public space in front. So that should be in the codes. Now, this is a T5 transect. Again, I met with Anders Dorney a couple of weeks ago in France, and he's producing a new book on codes, which probably some of you know. And part of that thing is that that could happen here with not a problem whatsoever to translate this into a code. But now let me give you the idea. Several alternatives were done, but this is the one that most people seem to have preferred. And that is, take the site, and you see the little red lines on here. Sorry, you see the little red lines on it coming in here. These are internal connections with each of these little kind of red dots in the middle being a kind of a neighborhood center. So create like 4 or 5 little neighborhood centers, but make the site really green. Which means on the left-hand side, keep that as a garden, and on the other side, make it an orchard. That continues on, so that the neighbors on both sides of it are completely buffered by green. And then the other question was, okay, what would these buildings start to look like? Well, here's a little axiometric, but the little axiometric, as you notice, has all green roofs on it and all solar panels on the roof. So the whole thing becomes an eco-based set of neighborhoods with a big public green in the middle and a garden on one side and an orchard on the other side. But notice down on Harrison Street, you can see a couple little red dots. They wanted some retail, a little bit of community, something or other. So here's the little doodle of that. One is that Harrison Street would need new street lights to be able to give it a connection. And then is there a possibility of cutting into the hill with putting a little bus stop right there with a little bit of retail, and you see the colored awnings, which are on the top of it, filtered through this massive wall of existing trees. And that's the program, and it's a big program, so that's the program for that. Now, I'm going to skip this one, Catherine, if you don't mind. I'm going to go directly. 4, we got a whole plan that was developed by folks for the choir college. We're not going to go into that. It's too much. But 5 is something I've got to talk to you guys about. People really focused a lot on the shopping center one. And a lot of work has been done on that shopping center. I mean, Jim is here, he's worked on it, Carlos Rodriguez has worked on it. My gosh, a lot of focus have gone on to that. And again, this is the duality in the town, that we've actually got 2 cores. We've got the shopping center core and we've got the downtown core. And the question is the relationship between those two. Susceptibility to change came up extraordinarily high. The whole area around the shopping center became highly susceptible to change, including the Ellis site and the other site that RTKL is doing, and Thanet Drive. And Thanet Drive, as you know, is done now. I was there yesterday, and it's looking pretty amazing. Now, the market rate affordable housing is under construction, and I didn't take the upgraded photographs, but nonetheless, that's what it is, and it's fairly interesting and dense. And then, of course, the town has now got a plan, I think you all know, hired an engineer to be able to do a study of Harrison Street. It bothers me that it's an engineering firm as opposed to a landscape architecture firm, but be that as it may, that's being in the process of being done. As you know, this thing has gone through tremendous changes over time. And what has been sort of interesting, I think it's got the largest potential change. And of course, there's an area of needed redevelopment, which is already done. And RTPL has got this under construction already, and they have followed a really cool model to be able to make that happen. And that is that they have embedded the parking with a liner building on the outside, so you're not going to see the parking. So the parking is embedded, and then the liner buildings on the other side of it then overlook the baseball fields, which is really kind of a cool and kind of an interesting idea. I'm not very happy about where the Walgreens is and what that means, but be that as it may, that's not my responsibility, or nor should I be concerned about it. So anyway, when you pop this stuff up in 3 dimensions, that's kind of what it's going to look like. It's probably not exactly what it'll look like, but it's close enough. Again, everything gets pushed up in axiometrics, and that's the program for it. But it looks like this, and it's a bit modern, and it looks a little bit like the Alice as well. So it's starting to develop its own kind of vernacular over a particular paces of time. And of course, then you've got the Alice, which is actually on the other side of here, and that's under construction now, as you know. And that plan looks like this. Now, this is the McCaffrey's is here. This is the big parking lot that's only partially full. And then the unfortunate thing is that this is all parking. All parking. There's a dog park here, but they made an interesting connection between Thunnett Drive so that you can get from Thunnett Drive to the actual shopping center, although it is what it is. Now, the question is, and this one was done really early, you've got the old rescue center sitting there with 2 houses. What could happen to that place? So we looked at several variations on that came out of the workshops and said, listen, again, this is kind of the standard 3-story kind of housing. It's not modern. In some cases, it's really a thought that perhaps this should be more traditional and let the stuff around the shopping center be the ultra-modern pieces. But also, what would happen if the center island disappeared and bigger bike lanes were actually put down? And we'll have to see what happens with what the engineering firm actually comes up with over a period of time. So there's the program for the old rescue squad building. And then if you look at this, and again, people are really smart town here. This was done at the early workshops. Notice where the big bulk of parking is. The big bulk of parking is around the shopping center, and it's over at the civic center. 2 areas that could be intercept parking. Can you imagine coming in, if you really need to come, you come in and intercept parking, you park your car, and 2 minutes later there's a bus that takes you any place around downtown you want to go. It would be incredible. Now, the concept diagrams, and again, you know, one can't help but doing it. They said the whole thing has got to be developed. And of course, one of the things that people had said to us early on is that they wanted to keep that big center green thing. Okay, that's a 1954 concept. Let's keep the big center green thing. And as you know, there's a kind of beginning of a cross-axis there. Not complete, but there's no cross-axis, which could actually get you from Harrison Street, bus stop, to parking, to the parks in the back, and create a pedestrian promenade through the middle of a potentially future shopping center area, or it's not a shopping center anymore, it'll become an urban neighborhood. Clearly it'll become an urban neighborhood. So here's the phasing. We had great fun thinking about this thing. How would we actually do this? So we would build the next phase of it, following the same example that RTPL and Jim put out earlier. The liner building, the parking, take that down, but then create a new building possibility for it to be developed in the front. So it's a 1, 2, 3 proposal. As you can see, what's happening is just moving from right to left, leaving McCaffrey's, and Alice is now complete, and the service parking for the Walgreens stays the same. And then over time, you complete it by adding again the same module again as it moves further to the left, and then you finally get to the final phase of this thing, which looks like this. Now, the thing that I find fascinating is that there are multiple places around the country that have done that. And it could be really a quite incredible urban neighborhood if it was done correctly. No doubt about that. But then the estimated program is, you know, there's a lot of housing and retail and parking and what have you, including McCaffrey's and what have you, and the parking spaces, and keep it at 3 and 4 and 5 stories and great streetscape improvements. But my caution on this one, that it's not eclipse the downtown. That's a real serious question. If it does not eclipse the downtown, because the downtown has got to remain the core center heart of this town, and I think that's important.